Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Circuit of the Americas, a very, very hot day here in Texas, and the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America Series. It's time to go qualifying, and the drivers and cars just making their way to the pit lane. Well, so far this week, extremely hot and some fierce on-track action as well. The lap times have been coming down, although not nearly as much as they were last year in cooler conditions. And moving into this weekend, some fantastic stories, some championship battles playing out. On top of the outright championship, for the moment, it's Nick Persing from California racing with Radical Northwest and Cameron Racing. He's only 8 points clear of Danny Dashelski, representing Wisco from Virginia. And Dashelski looking to clamber back into the top spot in terms of the championship. Of course, both those drivers fighting for Pro 1500 as well. And this year so far really has been a story of the young guns. Nick Persing, Danny Dashelski in a league of their own. But you can't count out Greg Gorski, who has been a fantastic competitor and came home with a win where we were last time on the streets of Toronto. You can see some of the fields there, the American flag flying. And here we are, cars starting to line up in pit lane. Circuit of the Americas hosting the USF program this weekend, as well as Porsche Sprint. A big weekend of USAC racing, and the Blue Marble Radical Cup certainly providing some of the fastest cars this weekend. The green flag has flown. The qualifying session is a go here at COTA, and you can start to see the cars trundling out. It's the 21 of Jack Yang who will lead the field out onto this extremely warm racetrack. And Louis Schreiber in the 111 following him. The big news from practice this morning was the pace from the 111 machine of Louis Schreiber. The Platinum class field being dominated by John Field so far this year. But Louis Schreiber certainly had some pace for him. Young Nick Persing in the number 19. We'll see what he can do. Came into the weekend with very little sleep, had a very, very tough time getting here with some issues at the airport. And said, though, that he was feeling well prepared. The car felt good yesterday. His pace needing some improvement this morning, though. Danny Dashelski certainly setting the benchmark in Pro 1500. And it'll be interesting to see if Persing in the number 19 can find some clear space. The 200 back with us. Chris McMurray. And McMurray, of course, a pretty storied sports car driver himself. Just going through shot, Austin Riley in that wonderful Dayglow yellow and blue car. He'll be another one to watch. Gorski, we mentioned before, he was quick this morning, as was Austin Riley. Look out, too, for some of the others in Pro 1500. I think particular another Canadian there, Robert Soroka from Ricebeck Racing, will be one to watch. He's looking fit as a fiddle and has certainly shown some pace in this championship. Still looking for a breakthrough win. And Greg Gorski was so pleased to get that on the streets of Toronto. Big difference going from the concrete canyon to these wide open runoff areas and racetrack, and USAC deciding this year to be a little bit more lenient, and you'll start to see the drivers use a fair bit of track. They can use to the white line basically on the outside of the green on the runoff of the exits, a little bit less on the corner apexes. Have to keep some part of the car on the apex curbing, but certainly more lenient than the Blue Marble Radical Cup has used before. Interestingly enough, speaking to Dashelski's coach just before the start of this session, he was saying that he's not convinced that it's worth using all of that extra surface. As Jim Booth goes through turn 1, trundling through and taking almost some avoiding action there, the car behind, and I think that was young Arul Venkatesh in a brand new SR3 XXR. But getting back to Jashelski's coach, just saying that on some corners, of course, using some extra runoff does help maintain the momentum. In other places, it's not worth using the curb. The curbs are still quite brutal here at COTA. And with just 25 minutes on the clock for this qualifying session, we'll see who rises to the top. Who can do it? Elaine Dursey has been quick in Platinum. John Field, as we mentioned, the former American Le Mans Series driver, has just been the star of the show when it comes to the Platinum class and these high horsepower, 425 brake horsepower, 380 foot-pound torque monster SR10s. We'll see if Louis Schreiber has his match today. Certainly did in this morning's practice session. Some wonderful drone shots here from COTA. And around about 25 cars taking to the track. A few less, a couple of drivers electing to sit out the heat here in Texas. We're expecting a big field for the final of the Blue Marble Radical Cup at Laguna Seca in just 2 weeks' time. But here we go. So, setting the pace immediately, it's Nick Persing who's fastest on the first flyer, 2:12.3. So at the moment, he's gone to the top of the charts in 1500. Jason Plotke setting the benchmark early in the Platinum class with a 2:11.9. So he's found some pace. But we expect the lap times to tumble down. We'll see how low they can get. The reference point really around COTA is about a 2:07 in a Platinum class car, so Plotke still with plenty of pace to find. And Louis Schreiber just putting in a lap. I think a lot of these drivers just trying to find some space at the moment. Jim Booth, I'm loving it. Mr. McDonald's, a storied competitor in the Blue Marble Radical Cup. And for that matter, Radical Racing all around the world. He and his son Ryan competed in the Masters Championship throughout Europe a few years ago and won the championship there in a Spider. Jim Booth has had just about every Radical model that's ever been made and is looking forward to going over to Portimao in, well, what is now a few weeks' time to participate in the Radical World Finals. And a number of drivers, John Field just signing up today. He'll be joined by a number of guys from Apex Motor Club, I believe both Bacons, Jace Bacon, Seth Bacon going as well. A couple of guys stepping up to the Pro 1500 ranks to take on the best of Europe and England, and expecting customers from all around the world to participate. Should be a great time supporting the European Le Mans Series. You can see here Arul Venkatesh pushing hard. That was almost track limits, I would say. But Venkatesh in that brand new XXR, the black, pink, and purple livery. So John Field still with some work to do because it's Elaine Dursey who's put his car on top. And Dursey has gone quickest with a 2:08.9. So we can start to see some of those times. The scoring on the live stream just indicating a number of laps. It's being set by laps at the moment. But when it comes up with the lap times, you can see what it is. It's 2:08.9 for Elaine Dursey in the 9 machine. And then we're back to John Field in a 2:09.1. So Dursey's impressive. It's his birthday this weekend. And celebrating in style at the moment. Fastest in the Platinum class. for the One Motorsports driver. We'd expect, though, to see the teammate John Field go to the top of the charts at some point. Louis Schreiber will be trying to get in the mix as well. Danny Dashelski is fastest in Pro 1500 from Nick Persing, and Dashelski's found around about a second. Over a second, in fact. And as I say that, Persing's gone a little bit quicker, it looks. So Dashelski now about 2/10 in it. So that's getting tight at the top of Pro 1500. Greg Gorski's in the mix as well. Robert Soroka, who we mentioned, needs to find a bit of pace. He's done that indeed. He's faster than his fellow Canadian, Austin Riley. Then we're back to Will Lynn, who's come back to the series in style. And Will Lynn right up there as well. Back in the 1340s, Ken Savage has to find some pace because it's Chris McMurray at the moment with a 2:17.3 that sets the pace over Savage in a 2:17.5. Seth Bacon in the 19s and Jace Bacon still in the 21s. Ben Blander also in the 21s. Will be interesting to see what the 34 can do. Team Stradale driver Ben Blander has been quick this year. And welcome to Ralph Ludwig participating in his first Blue Marble Radical Cup. Right, so Field has gone quicker now. A 2:08.5 for John Field. And the gauntlet has been laid down. We'll see if everyone uses the full session here. Of course, typically the Hankook tyres come in a little bit later on in the session. But with this heat, I suspect everything's up to temperature a bit quicker. So there you can see the top three in the Platinum class is also the top three on the leaderboard overall. Dashelski mixing it up with the top of the Platinum class cars. Oh, and a little moment there, and a bit of an altercation almost with the 555. That's Ralph Ludwig just jostling for track position in this qualifying session, and a frustrated Robert Soroka, no doubt, because he was just trying to get into the final corner to start another flyer, and now he's been balked by a slightly slower car. You can see behind the 555 in that stunning livery G-Tech machine, that is the leader in the championship, the number 5. You can see the pace difference there through the high-speed S's of Ken Savage. Ken Savage leading the Pro 1340 Championship. He's had a clean season, and it's really been a story of consistency versus some raw pace from the Bacons, but a few more mishaps. And of course, they've young Jace Bacon finding the wall a couple of times this season. He certainly showed plenty of pace out there. And certainly some big things to come from that young man. Another name to jot down for the future, young Jace Bacon. There's plenty in this field. Robert Soroka, Austin Riley, of course, our reigning outright champion. Danny Dashelski and Nick Persing. And Dashelski needs this point. 1 point goes to each of the Class Motul Pole Award winners, and that would take him down to 7 points between himself and Persing. Dashelski a little bit unlucky with passing under the yellow at Road America earlier in the year, and that really set him back. He's been clawing his way, slowly chipping away at it. I guess you could say he's typically had the pace over Nick Persing, but they're locked together very, very tightly. Some good airtime for our new runner there, Ralph Ludwig. Loves his motorsport. Typically runs out at the country club in Arizona, Apex. And there we go. So a 94 of Soroka on the charge. What can he do? He currently sits fourth fastest in class. Gorski ahead of him, Persing and then Dashelski. Some work to do for the 94. Using a fair bit of curb through the S's. The drivers have been warned that through turn 4 and 5 is where the officials are particularly interested in where the drivers are cutting the curb. You can see plenty of track being used. A high-speed S's here, just an ultimate challenge in a downforce car like the Radical. And the Ry-Spec machine set up by Richard Yin, always strong, as Chris McMurray in the 200 just going slowly down the back straight, potentially finding some space. It's amazing when you think of 25 cars on track on this over 3 mile circuit, and yet they still somehow seem to be running together as Arul Venkatesh uses all the track limits and more. So, John Fields still ahead of the Platinum class. Try and pick up some of those cars potentially in a minute. It's easy to tell the difference of the Platinum class cars because they've got the big nostrils in front. And we're just watching Greg Gorski, who's third fastest, peel into pit lane. Through comes the Robert Soroka through the last corner. What can he do now? He doesn't improve on his lap time. And if we just look at the splits, Arul Venkatesh has actually had the fastest final sector. Louis Schreiber's on a burner. He's just gone purple in sector 2. And Louis Schreiber in the 111 is trying to hunt down Alain Dersey and John Field in terms of lap time. The man on screen is also on a charge. Ken Savage needs to find some pace because Jace Bacon has gone faster in Pro 1340. Chris McMurray is in a bit of a league of his own. So Ken Savage goes through 37.5 for his first sector. Still got to find some time, around about 9 tenths. About 5 tenths to Chris McMurray in that first sector as Chris has just set a green sector 1 and obviously just calming things down has allowed him to get on the charge and put in hopefully another flyer. So as we look at the timing screen, Jim Booth relatively quick in the mix of the Platinum class. John Field leads that one from Alain Dersey. Third fastest in this qualifying session so far is Louis Schreiber, who had an awesome sector 2. Unfortunately, though, his 209.8 last lap wasn't fast enough. And Wayne Williams, the Canadian flag flying on the end plate there. Wayne Williams was super quick in the rain and the wet conditions in Toronto in front of some of his, former hometown. He now lives in Texas, and you could say this is his home track, but certainly flying the Canadian flag and doing the job on the streets of Toronto. 3 podiums. He was unlucky not to take a win. He just had a big moment there. You can see the back end of that SR10 step out. And Williams, who's sitting 10th. He's about 21st fastest at the moment. Has got lots of work to do. So young Austin Riley just returned from England. Has been hunted at the moment by Wayne Williams, but Austin Riley just loving the time he's spent at Silverstone Circuit. First time racing away from the North American continent, and he did everyone proud a huge contingent of his Racing with Autism crew from England coming out to support the young gun from Canada. Did a great job, had a top 10 finish in a highly competitive UK field. The Haggerty Radical Cup, United Kingdom, very, very quick. With 6 minutes remaining on the clock. And again, plenty of track being used at the top of the screen there by these competitors as they come off the final corner and try and get a solid run down the straightaway and into turn one. The elevation change is massive here at COTA. We pick up Persing, who looks to be on a flyer. What can he do in these final minutes? Persing, best lap, 2:11.6, but it's still 7/10 away from Danny Dashelski, the 88 machine. So quick around here. Mikey and the guys at Wisco Racing always seem to set up a fast race car. And the SR3 XXR doing the job. You can tell the new cars with the shark fins on the back engine cover, and all the drivers reporting that there's a lot more high-speed stability from the shark fin. It's not just a cosmetic element. And there's one indeed on the back of Arul Venkatesh's car. His car also sporting the cockpit safety structure. An initiative by Radical to provide a little bit more protection for the drivers. Ahead of the helmet. And John Field has not been eclipsed. The 2:08.5 still the best of the Platinum drivers. Alain Dersey, though, what a superstar. He's found some pace indeed. And a 2:08.9 for Dersey. Very, very impressive. Louis Schreiber, a 2:09.2. He was pretty confident heading into this session. In fact, after practice one, he thought he had a couple of aces up the sleeve. He'd just thrown on some new boots, or was about to, for qualifying, and thought that would be the demon tweak. But it hasn't been so far. Schreiber still with some work to do. Jason Plotke, fourth fastest in class. Impressive for the Apex Motor Club owner. And Plotke found motorsport, found a real passion setting up the country club. It's been a fierce competitor out there in the local Radical Challenge Series. And the grid's huge out at Apex Country Club. And that's really provided a platform for these drivers. The likes of the Bacons and Plotke, Chris McMurray, all sorts of guys. We're expecting 8 cars from Crown Concepts and Apex Motor Club at Laguna Seca for the grand finale alongside IndyCar in just 2 weeks' time. And here we go, Louis Schreiber on the outside of the curbs. You can see the car was upset by that. I don't think that worked. Louis comes out of the final corner. What can he do across the line? And still not fast enough. So he was trying to get a good run to start another burner. But that's the challenge around COTA. If you're going to take up a whole lot of track, you can see that the inside of the tyres just getting caught on the back of the curb, the car dancing around on top, upsetting the car as he was going into the braking zone of the final corner. Through the S as he goes. And has a moment again, and it has a spin. So Schreiber in the 111 has turned it around on his flyer. And that's not what he wanted to do. Now there's still 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Can he get around to start another lap before the clock winds down? I think he can. A lap time typically in the 2:10, so given where he was on track, he should be okay, but he'll have to hustle. Dashelski still the leader in 1500. He's setting the benchmark in this qualifying session. Chris McMurray, fastest in Pro 1340 from Jace Bacon. Ken Savage, third fastest. Seth Bacon and Ben Blander round out the top 5 in that class. It's John Field from Elaine Dursey. Louis Schreiber, who we just saw have that spin with under 2 minutes remaining. Schreiber has to circulate quickly if he's going to start another one. Of course, that's not optimal for the tyres. In a perfect world, he'd be calming it down, just taking a breather, resetting himself, cooling that SR10 down before he goes on the charge for this final lap. As it stands, he's got to come around and start another one. So here he goes through the final corners. Can he keep it tidy into this one? You can see he's elected to take a slightly earlier turn in to the final corner, and he's running wide. He's pushing hard. You can see as he got back on the power, the back of the SR10 stepping out. Under a minute remains. A little bit of traffic down the straightaway, but hopefully he got a little bit of a tow. Now big on the binders into turn 1. Louis Schreiber. Can he keep it tight? Can he keep it tidy? You can see compared to the Pro 15 or 1340 car behind him, the SR10 doesn't quite get through the corners with the pace that the lighter weight SR3 does. Now through the high speed S's. This is where he came a cropper last time. He's just got to keep it clean, keep it tidy. Again, the SR3 closes up through that section of the racetrack. There we are. That was the problem child last time. He's got through there cleanly, bouncing it over the curbs. Pushing hard is the 111 of Louis Schreiber. He's a fierce competitor in the Radical Cup. Always worth some excitement. And all the track on the exit down the long straightaway. Drivers still saying that it's one of the bumpiest parts on the racetrack here. You can see that they've repaved some of COTA in preparation for Formula One. But the bump's still pretty severe as he heads down into the hairpin. Again, big on the binders, and you can see just a moment as the back stepped around, and then he seemed to have almost a little bit of understeer mid-corner. Hopefully he's got through cleanly. Now a little bit of patience required as we go into this very, very slow section of the racetrack. It's almost painfully slow after some of these high-speed corners. Back gritting the teeth at around the high-speed sweeper before you head into turn 19. It's important to get the lines right. 2 more corners for Louis Schreiber. He's gone a little bit faster in some of these sectors, but whether it's enough, the checker flag is out, and it isn't. So Louis Schreiber still third fastest in class, behind Dursey and John Field. Second row of the grid start. And he'll be alongside Danny Dashelski, who again has impressed in Pro 1500. Dashelski, fastest in that class from Persing, who'll start directly behind him on the grid. Jason Plotke will start from 5th. Jim Booth, impressive, 7th overall. And 5th fastest in class. Greg Gorski right up in the thick of the Pro 1500 fight as well. He's leading the Fangio class in terms of the points for the slightly older gentleman in the Pro 1500 field. Solid performance too from Robert Soroka, who sits just behind Gorski in terms of the lap times. And then Wayne Williams certainly found some pace, and he's rocketed up ahead of Scott Wagner, his teammate. He'll start a provisional 10th on the grid. The first of 3 races coming up later this afternoon. And it certainly, COTA has always provided some action. See here, some of the drivers still coming through. The clock is at 0. A couple of these guys potentially, I think everyone probably on their in-lap. Danny Dashelski, Plotke may be circulating, but most people have taken the checker. Drivers coming into Parc Ferme. We'll celebrate the pole awards in a moment. But again, congratulations to John Field, Danny Dashelski, and Chris McMurray taking the provisional poles and the Motul pole award here at Circuit of the Americas. That was qualifying for the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America Series. We'll see you back this afternoon for race 1.